All right, good evening. I call the March 9th, 2021 regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. We're going to begin with the oath of office for new commissioners. Attorney Winter, will you please swear in new Commissioner Diane Albert?
Okay, give me a moment to find my script.
To get rid of some of the background noise, I'm going to ask if you're not speaking, you guys to go ahead and mute if you're not going to be speaking. If you are going to be speaking, keep yourself unmuted.
Sorry, I'm getting there. All right. Commissioner, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, your name, please.
Diane Elizabeth Albert,
Thank you. Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the State of New Mexico
the Constitution of the State of New Mexico
and the laws of the State of New Mexico
and the laws of the State of New Mexico
and all local ordinances
and all local ordinances
of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque,
of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
perform and discharge the duties
perform and discharge the duties
of the office
of the office
of the Planning and Zoning Commission
of the Planning and Zoning Commission
according to the law and the best of my ability.
according to the law and to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Winter. Will you please swear in new Commissioner JT Michelson?
Okay, Mr. Michelson, also please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I,
I,
please state your name,
A.T. Michelson,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the State of New Mexico
and the State of New Mexico
and the Constitution,
and the Constitution,
and the laws of the State of New Mexico.
and laws of the State of New Mexico,
Thank you. And all local ordinances
and all local ordinances
of the Village
of the Village
of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque,
of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
perform and discharge the duties
perform and discharge the duties
of the Planning and Zoning Commission
of the Planning and Zoning Commission
according to the law and the best of my ability.
according to the law and the best of my ability.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item 1B, roll call. Commissioner Christensen. I see you're indicating that you're present and waving at the camera, so thank you. We'll move on to Commissioner Benavides.
Present.
Commissioner Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Berenson. Not present. Commissioner Albert.
Present.
Commissioner Michelson.
Present.
Commissioner Seavey, present. Let the record reflect that a quorum is present for the meeting. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Director Justice, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are no changes to the agenda.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Gay has moved to approve the agenda. Commissioner Michelson has seconded the motion. The motion carries unanimously. Item 2, public comment period. Residents may address the Planning and Zoning Commission to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Audience members will be given an opportunity to comment on agenda items as they come up. Speakers must register with the village staff prior to the beginning of the meeting. Kiko, do we have any members of the public signed up to speak?
We do stand by.
Sorry, just to interrupt real quick while Kiko is getting the person signed up in to speak. If we could do a vote for the approval of the agenda, please.
Of the consent agenda?
For the approval of the agenda.
Oh, okay. We'll begin with a roll call vote for the approval of the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. Please excuse me. Director Justice, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Okay, and is there a motion to approve the agenda?
The motion was made by Commissioner Gay and seconded by Commissioner Michelson.
Okay. Oh, and we'll move on to a roll call vote. There it is. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yay.
Commissioner Gay,
Yay.
Commissioner Berenson, not present. Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Michelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey, aye. The motion carries unanimously. Now we'll move on to the public comment period. And Kiko, if you have your speaker ready, please.
There is actually no one indicating to speak at this time.
Okay. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak during the public comment period who did not sign up prior to the meeting? Please use the raise hand tool in Zoom to indicate this. And seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We'll begin with the approval of the minutes, February 9th, 2021 regular meeting. Are there any corrections or comments from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second the motion to approve the minutes from the February 9th, 2021 meeting.
Okay, Commissioner Benavides has moved to approve the minutes as read. Commissioner Christensen has seconded the motion. The motion carries, oh, excuse me. We'll now begin with a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Michelson,
yes,
Commissioner Seavey, aye. The motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item 4, public hearings and applications. Item A, variance 21-02, a request by Paulette Baca for a variance from 9.2.7 E2A1 front setback shall be 25 feet to allow for a structure or an addition in the front setback in the A1 zone in the North Rio Grande character area. The property is located at 8533 Rio Grande Boulevard Northwest and is legally known as Tract A of Tracts A and B, lands of Mark Weil, Town of Alameda Grant, projected section 17, Township 11, Range 3 East, Township 11 North, Range 3 East, NMPM, Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, New Mexico, as filed in the office of the Bernalillo County Clerk on June 3rd, 1992. The property contains 1.0876 acres, more or less. Are there any commissioners who will recuse themselves from this item? Okay, seeing none. Attorney Winter, please swear in Director Tiffany Justice.
Tiffany, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Director Justice, may we have the planning report?
Yes. So for this application, the applicant desires to build an addition to an existing dwelling, and that existing dwelling is located in the front north setback. The addition is intended to provide handicapped access and living for a home that's currently not handicapped accessible, primarily for the bathrooms. A variance was granted for other structures on this property, some horse stables back in 1995. That variance allowed for placement of those horse structures within the setback specifically. They did not approve a blanket variance for a reduced setback, hence why this application is coming before the commission now. For surrounding properties, all of the surrounding properties are zoned A1 in the North Rio Grande character area. For the analysis, there's a few things to look at. The first being the setbacks. What's considered the front, side, and rear of a property is based on where the access comes from. And so even if the house necessarily, this isn't the front of the house, this is still the front of the property. So for this property, the north is where the access easement is located. So the north provides access, and that is considered the front setback. Another factor to consider for this case is our non-conforming structures section of our code. That section of our code allows for extension or enlargement of non-conforming structures if the commission finds that the extension or enlargement does not adversely affect surrounding properties and resources. Since this is an addition to a dwelling that is currently within that north setback, this would be an extension of that non-conforming building. And this addition would not adversely affect surrounding properties since the dwellings are already located within the setbacks. The addition would not extend closer to the property line than the existing building. The property to the north is undeveloped and is likely to remain that way since it's owned by NMDOT and is a public parking area. The property line abuts an access road, which will be used by at most 2 homes to a lot at the back that can be subdivided into 2 properties. And the stables that are closer to the property line were granted a variance about 25 years ago. Resources would not be adversely impacted by this variance. In terms of the variance criteria, there's a few things that we look at. And in accordance with section 9.2.2571, this variance is not contrary to the public interest. So this addition, as mentioned before, would extend to the front setback the same distance from the property line as the existing building. The property to the north that would be impacted the most by this infringing on the setback is public property that's unlikely to be developed. The distance from the access easement will be the same as the existing dwelling, and impacts on neighbors will be minimal. And redevelopment of this property to bring it up to modern standards is not necessarily contrary to the public interest. And the village received no comments in opposition prior to publishing of the meeting packet. In accordance with section 9.2.257A2, the variance meets hardship criteria number 5 and 6. Number 5 is that the development proposed in the variance differs from what's allowed in the ordinances enough to relieve the alleged hardship. The addition would still be set back from the property line and would not be closer to the property than the existing building. And like the variance that was approved for the horse stables along the property lines, this variance would be approved for just this building, and any new buildings that would need to be located within the setbacks would have to apply for another variance. Criteria number 6 is that the alleged hardship has relief justifiable in accordance with the goals and policies of the master plan. With all variances, there's language in our master plan that is contrary to variances. It says to enforce the ordinances, and in other sections do support this application, and specifically in village form and in a residential development section. And in accordance with section 9.2.257A3, the use of the premises is not changing. The property is zoned A1, and the proposed use of this variance would be a dwelling that is allowed in the A1 zone. So with that, the department recommends approval of B-21-02 for a variance from section 9.2.7E2A1. Front setback shall be 25 feet to allow for a structure, an addition, in the front setback in the A1 zone in the North Rio Grande character area with the following conditions and findings. The condition that the variance granted allows for placement of specifically this addition within the front or north setback, and further encroachments into setbacks on this property would require another variance. And then the findings, the primary finding is that per section 9.2.23 E1B on non-conforming uses and structures, the Planning and Zoning Commission finds that this extension or enlargement of the dwelling granted by this variance would not adversely affect surrounding properties and resources. If the commission votes to deny this application, the finding will be changed to find that the variance will adversely affect surrounding properties and resources. In terms of the variance criteria, the variance is and is not in conformance with the goals and policies of the master plan, as I mentioned before. The hardship criteria identified are number 5 and 6, and no prior application for a variance has been submitted on this property in the prior 6 months. There was a variance that came before the commission a few months ago, but that was for the property next door. Therefore, the variance request meets the requirements of section 9.2.25, E7A, 1, 2, and 3, B, and C, and the public notice requirements have been met. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Justice. Are there any questions from the commission for Director Justice? Yes, Commissioner Michelson.
Have we received any positive or negative comments from the neighbors surrounding this property?
Commissioner Michelson, commissioners, no, we have not. We haven't received any comments on this application so far.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yes, to Director Justice, were the was a notice for a variance posted on the property, and were the neighbors within, 300 feet contacted?
Commissioner Benavides, commissioners, yes. So as with all applications, public notice is given by mail to all listed property owners of the properties, not necessarily those who are living there, whoever owns the property. And a sign is given to the applicant to post some place that is visible from the road, typically on the front of the property on a fence.
Do we have any other questions from the commission? Okay, hearing none. Is the applicant present?
Yes, stand by.
Hello,
Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Paulette Baca, 8533 Rio Grande Boulevard, Northwest.
Thank you. Attorney Winter, please swear in Ms. Baca.
Ms. Baca, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Ms. Baca, would you like to speak about your application?
Yes. I put in for this variance when we first bought the property back in November. We went and we looked at the property, we looked at the home. We had intended to just not add an addition to it. But to be quite honest, we never really noticed how small the bathrooms were, to be quite honest. We were just overtaken by the beauty of the outside, to be honest. We spend most of our time there. So after we bought the house and we were looking, that's when this came up. That's when we contacted an architect and came up with a design that would work for us and not affect our neighbors or any of our surrounding community.
Thank you, Ms. Baca. Do we have any questions from the commission for Ms. Baca? Hearing none, is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of the application? Okay, hearing none from Kiko. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition of the application?
No hands are raised.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further comments from the commission at this point? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the floor for comments. Do we have any discussion on the application prior to motion? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
A motion to approve variance 21.02 for a variance from 9.2.7E to A1. The front setback shall be 25 feet for a structure in the front setback in an A1 zone in the North Rio Grande character area, with the following conditions and findings cited in the planning director's report.
I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Christensen has moved to approve variance 21-02 as stated, including the conditions and findings in the report, and Commissioner Benavides has seconded the motion. We'll begin with a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Albert?
Aye.
Commissioner Michelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey, aye. The motion carries unanimously. Let the record show that public hearing item 4A, the request by Paulette Baca for a variance, is formally closed. Thank you for participating. We'll now move on to old business, item 5, discussion of the variance language. Director Justice, please present the proposed changes to the variance language.
Right, so Chair, Commissioners, you'll see within your packet a report of Variance Subcommittee on recommended changes to Los Ranchos ordinances. This is from the Variance Subcommittee, which and this document specifically was spearheaded and written by former Commissioner Lynn Eby. So you'll notice that there's this document, and then afterwards there's a few other supplemental documents. One of the documents has been before the commission, and then a couple others were provided to the Variance Subcommittee as we've discussed and deliberated on this topic. Just so I guess the goal for this discussion is to get some feedback from the commission on the current proposed changes to the ordinance before these proposed changes would be brought before the Board of Trustees for advertisement and then adoption. We don't necessarily have a deadline or a timeline for this, so we don't have to have all of the discussion wrapped up at this meeting. If there ends up being more discussion, we can have this on the agenda for next month's meeting or a special meeting. The way that I will kind of present this is just to kind of go over everything. And then with each section, I'll take questions. And then hopefully at the end, we can have some discussion. So for part 1, this is the definition of the variance. You'll notice that pretty much it's the same. However, we removed a few sentences from it, a few parts from it. That's because what was removed was already in the variance section itself, or was too specific for variances. Specifically, there's some language that says specifically lot size and setback regulations. However, variances can be granted and should be granted for other things and other requirements of the village code besides just lot size or setbacks. So that has been removed, and in essence, it's just been shortened a little bit. And are there any questions about that specifically? All right, hearing none. So part 2, the variance and hardship criteria. You'll notice that much of the language is the same. However, the big changes, of course, are that now the organization of it has been changed. Part A talks about what is required in order to grant a variance. Part B goes into the hardship criteria that is referenced in Part A. And then Part C is just general things that are applicable for all variances. Much of this language was already in the variance language before, but now it's just kind of clearer. A few things to note. Grammatically, there was some confusion before about the and the ors, and there was a period, that kind of thing. That's been changed now to say just or for the hardship criteria. One of the hardship criteria, well, actually both criteria 5 and 6 have been moved elsewhere, and there's a new criteria 5. And the intent there, as mentioned in the report, is that it does need to be a little bit broader because the first 4 are primarily based on the land, and there are some hardships that can be not tied to the land. So number 5 kind of takes that into consideration. And then one thing that has been added in the general principles is number 4, the alleged hardship was not self-imposed by the property owner. This was something that was noticed in other communities' variance language, and it seemed reasonable to include it, and the variance subcommittee seemed to favor it. One thing to note just with all of this, of course, is that the language is still that the variance may be granted in these circumstances. This is not changed between the proposed and the existing language. There's even if a variance does meet all of these criteria, the commission is not obligated to grant the variance. There's always the opportunity for granting or not granting the variance. Are there any questions on this section?
I do have one, Director Justice, in that new clause, item 5, giving proper weight to the interests of the property owner. Is there any language anywhere else that clarifies that this interest is not for economic purposes? I know that was in the previous language.
Yes, so that is, I guess, moved to Part C 2, financial gain or loss. It's not specified specifically for number 5, but it's just kind of a general thing for all variance applications. The economic factor can't be the deciding factor. It might be a factor of the applicant's argument. However, it's not necessarily considered a hardship.
I see. Thank you, Director Justice.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none. So part 3 is actually not tied to the variance section or the variance definition. However, this did come up when talking with the variance subcommittee. It seemed that there can be circumstances where it just in the interest of fairness, an application can be brought, I guess, can be administratively decided similar to a variance, however, only under like kind of certain circumstances. It would provide fair application for setbacks for properties that are affected by this different lot size. And it would make development easier, especially in cases that this would likely be granted because there's already some language in the variance section that mentions unusually small properties. So specifically, the language that I'm talking about is adding a clause to section A1 that would allow for a legally non-conforming lot. So not necessarily a newly subdivided lot or somebody who wants to subdivide a lot, but a lot that already exists, that it is, if it's half an acre or less, they would be subject to the R2 setback instead of the A1. R2 being one dwelling per half acre, A1 being one dwelling per acre. Since the size of the property is already essentially R2, in this case, it seemed fair to have them have the option to have them comply with those setbacks. Similar to the variance section, there is still a may language within this. So even in circumstances that seem like this could be appropriate, the planning director would not necessarily be obligated to grant this without a variance. And in certain circumstances could find that this would still require a variance to take before the commission. And are there any questions about part 3?
Yes. So I do have a question for you, Director Justice. So if this is adopted, meaning the smaller setback requirements for smaller lots, if it is adopted, that gives the director the discretion to make that decision without coming before the P&Z Commission. Is that correct?
That is correct. And then still taking into consideration whether the new setbacks would be in conformance with the goals and policies of the master plan and not contrary to the public interest.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions on this section? I guess hearing none, I guess I welcome any feedback on the proposed language from the commission, feedback as to whether this should go before the board, that kind of thing.
First of all, I'd like to thank you and Dan, Gil, and Lynn for doing this. I mean, going through this and reading it, I do like the proposed changes, especially on page 31. I think it's much more clear regarding the hardship, because I know that's something everybody has struggled with. I like also and see the general principles where you've added 4 and 6, which we talked about. I just think going through this, when I read through it, it did make it much more easier to follow. The wording was clearer. So I thank you guys, all of you all, for working on this. I just can't imagine the chore it was going through the materials that you provided, but what you all put together was very clear and very understandable. So thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Michelson.
Commissioner Justice, I think it's important that you added this new part to part 3, since we have such a large percentage of the lots in the A1 zone that are less than 1 acre. And when I see most of the approvals on that list that you gave them, most of them, when they came before the planning and zoning, were approved. So I think the big change is giving the planning and zoning person the right to look at it, make sure it conforms with the master plan, but still not have to bring it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I think that's a good addition.
Go ahead, Director, or Commissioner Benavides.
So Director Justice asked for comments in regards to this, this latest change, I would recommend that Director Justice establish some sort of timeline for that to happen. And maybe 2 different dates, you know, where you can, somebody can propose comments and then we can look at it and then it's done, right? Otherwise it's open-ended.
Right. So Commissioner Benavides, commissioners, if there's, I guess, recommendations from the commission that differ from that included in this report, if there's any questions for anything that needs to be clarified, please speak up. If the only feedback I receive is that it seems good to go before the board, then this would be before the board at their next month's agenda on April 14th for advertisement, and then their May agenda for adoption. So I guess if there aren't any comments from the commission that indicate that we should revisit this, or if there's any questions, if I could just get your comments back by the end of this Friday by email, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you, Director Justice, and thank you to the commission, to the subcommittee for working on this. It's a really thorough job, and we'll submit comments by end of week if anybody comes up with anything. I guess we'll now move on to new business. Adoption of resolutions for 2021. Each year we put in place resolutions for conducting the Planning and Zoning Commission's meetings. Each resolution will be up for comments and discussion with a motion and a vote. Director Justice, could you give the commission just a little bit more background on this, please?
Certainly. Chair, commissioners. So these 3 resolutions are adopted every year by the commission. They cover the Open Meetings Act, the rules for the transaction of business, and closed sessions for conducting Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. The Open Meetings Act and closed session resolutions are the exact same as last year. The rules for the transaction of business was amended twice last year, once due to COVID-19 and once to allow for discussion before a motion. Both of those changes have been are included in this new rules for the transaction of business. So this is the same resolution that was adopted back in fall or winter of 2020. And I stand for any questions.
Okay, hearing none from the commission, we'll move on to item A1, adoption of resolution 2021-1, Planning and Zoning Open Meetings Act. Do we have any discussion from the commission? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the adoption of resolution 2021-1.
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Benavides has moved to adopt resolution 2021-1. Commissioner Gay has seconded. We'll move on to a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes.
Commissioner Albert?
Aye.
Commissioner Michelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey? Aye. The motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item A2, adoption of resolution 2021-2, planning and zoning, rules for the transaction of business. Do we have any discussion from the commission?
Chair Seavey, I have a question about that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gay.
So either last month or the month before, we put in the revised rule that we would allow comment. I don't remember all the sequence of it, but comment after the if you made a motion, then we'd have a comment period. Do you remember that, Tiffany? And then, so if we made that change, is the way I understood it from Commissioner Park, is that change that he recommended that we make was not with Robert's Rule of Orders, and our rules for transaction of business don't include any other rules. Can't remember the one he used. It was a Scott's rule or something of that nature. Is that covered in these rules of transaction for business, do you know, since we approved it?
So Commissioner Gay, Commissioners, yes, so the change that former Commissioner Park had mentioned about having comment after the floor is closed, but before a motion is made, that is still included in this version of the resolution. It's under, it's on page 54 under section I, it's number 1. And this does comply with the village's, with I guess the rest of the resolution, which mentions that the village will comply with Robert's Rules of Order, except as otherwise specified in this case. So this is the same resolution that was adopted a few months ago that still allows for that discussion before the motion, and it still, per Robert's rules, allows discussion after the motion.
And that's on page 51 of the
Sorry, it's on page 54
before.
under section I, voting and decision by the commission.
Okay, well, I will take your word for it. Thank you.
Do we have any further discussion from the commission on this resolution? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I move to approve adoption of resolution 2021-2 planning and zoning rules for the transaction of business.
I second that.
Okay, Commissioner Gay has seconded. I saw your hand there, Commissioner Michelson.
Be faster.
Commissioner Christensen has moved to adopt resolution 2021-2, and Commissioner Gay has seconded the motion. We'll move on to a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Michelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey, aye. The motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item 3, adoption of resolution 2021-3, planning and zoning closed sessions. Do we have any discussion from the commission on this resolution? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I make a motion for the adoption of resolution 2021-3, planning and zoning closed sessions.
I second the motion.
Okay. Commissioner Gay has moved to adopt resolution 2021-3. Commissioner Michelson has seconded the motion. Move on to a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Michelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Move on to item B, election of officers. We'll begin with nomination for chair. It is now time to elect our officers for the year. Do we have any nominations for chair?
I nominate Drew Seavey for chair.
I second that.
Okay, Commissioner Gay has moved to elect acting chair CV to be chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioner Gay has seconded. We'll move on with a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
aye,
Commissioner Michelson,
Yes,
Commissioner CV, yes. The motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to nominations for vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair? I would like to nominate Commissioner Gay for vice chair.
I second that.
Okay, Commissioner CV has moved to nominate Commissioner Gay for vice chair, and Commissioner Christensen has seconded the motion. We'll move on to a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
aye,
Commissioner Michelson,
yes.
and Commissioner CV, yes. The motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on to nominations for secretary. Do we have any nominations for secretary?
I would like to nominate Commissioner Benavides for the position of secretary.
I will second. Commissioner Christensen has moved to nominate Commissioner Benavides for the secretary. Commissioner CV has seconded the motion. We'll move on to a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
aye,
Commissioner Michelson,
Yes,
Commissioner CV, aye. The motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on to reports with the Planning Department report. Director Justice, may we have the Planning Department report, please?
Yes, commissioners, so Jennifer Schilling, our planning and zoning coordinator and records information manager, she's moving forward with Kiko, our IT specialist, on the design of the new village website. That's going to be coming forward probably in a few months. But we're basically hoping to update our website, make it easier to navigate, that kind of thing. She continues to update the business and magazine databases, and building permits, parcel permits, and work on the magazine continues as usual. Keen Heinzelman is our code enforcement officer. He's patrolling the village and working with property owners to bring their properties into compliance, and also processing large building permits. I'm working on revisions to the film policy and permit. Those are actually before those will be on the board's agenda for tomorrow night, as well as an ordinance for cannabis. The changes for the film policy will clarify the requirements and the documents expected of film productions. And I continue to work on an ordinance for short-term rentals. So that should be coming up here in a few months. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Justice. We'll move on to the commissioners' informal discussion. Are there any reports or information that any commissioners would like to share? I'd like to start off by just saying welcome, Commissioner Albert and Commissioner Michelson to the commission. It's good to have you here.
thank you,
Thank you for your service.
thank you.
If we have no further discussion, we'll
I
move on to.
hope the rest of the year goes as smooth as this has tonight.
Yeah.
Just be forewarned how quickly you move up the seniority ranks.
Yeah, it happens fast.
Well, you did a great job tonight, Drew. You did a really nice job.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, now Director CV, I'd like to congratulate you, 50 minutes. So from now on, you're gonna have to try to beat that record. 50
Okay.
minutes. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah, that went very fast. Okay, well, hearing no further discussion, we'll move on to item 9, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Benavides has moved to adjourn. Commissioner Gay has seconded the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting for March 9th, 2021 is adjourned at 7:51 PM.
You guys
Thank
have
you.
See you next month.